Hello, class. It's Mr. Cablan here, and I'm here to start off the final chapter in this course here that deals strictly with volume and surface area of various three-dimensional shapes. However, today's lessons and as well as the next one will focus on conversions going from one unit to the other. And this lesson here in today that we're going to look at today is a conversion between what are called imperial units. And when we're looking at imperial units, it's actually a type of unit that we don't often use in Canada. However, you're probably familiar with some of the terms and some of the units you'll be seeing in today's lesson. So, for example, when you're driving down in the United States, okay, they don't use kilometers down there. Okay, they use miles. Okay, miles is an example of an imperial measure. So we're going to go through all that in today's lesson, and then go through the steps required for you to solve and convert within the imperial measurement system. So when you're dealing with the imperial measure, as I said before, this is the type of units they use, especially in the United States. You see it all over the place here. And basically, some of the basic units, and most of them you've either heard of or are familiar with to begin with over here. And the first one here, again, deals with length and distance. So units such as foot, inch, yard, and miles are all examples of imperial units to measure length and distance. And what you see there is just an example of a ruler that happens to be given in inches. So quite often, when you describe your height, you tend to say things like, I'm 6 feet 2 inches, or something like that. Okay, but that's all imperial units. Whereas in Canada, we use what's called the metric system, which we'll look at in the next lesson. Okay, next one here is when we're dealing with mass or weight. The units for imperial measure are pounds, ounces, and tons. And most of you are probably familiar with pounds, especially because again, that tends to be the unit people communicate when they're talking about how much they weigh. Okay, so that's an example of imperial measure. And another one too is volume. Okay, so for example, in the States, if you buy something like a bottled water or a can of pop, their measurement for volume is in fluid ounces, whereas we use things like milliliters and liters. Okay, they also use cups as well as gallons, especially when it comes to gallons. Okay, they use that when you're buying gas in the States. So all of that again is they use that down there. All right, and last but not least here deals with temperature. Now in the States, they do measure temperature in degrees. However, it's in a different unit, which is called Fahrenheit, whereas in Canada, we deal with Celsius. And that's what we're going to look at in the next lesson, is how we can actually go from imperial to metric and metric to imperial. But today we're going to focus on dealing with the imperial. All right, so as you can see here are just several of the conversions that you are going to use in today's lesson to convert within the imperial system. Now, what I'm going to show you here is how to use any of these conversions, okay, based on the conversions that you see in this chart. So I'm going to actually use the first one as an example because this is the one that people tend to be familiar with, and it's going from feet to inches. So when you're given a conversion, okay, the easiest way to do this is to see that if you take a look at the chart, okay, notice that each conversion is one unit and some number of the other one. So for example, if you want to convert feet to inches, okay, what you have to do there is to take whatever feet you have and then multiply it by 12. Okay, so to break this down here, and I call this the forward procedure. So when I'm going, for example, something like this, from feet to inches, I would take the number of feet and then multiply it by 12. Okay, so that's if I'm going from feet to inches. Now, if I'm given a certain number of inches and I want to change it into feet, okay, I would take the number of inches and then take that and divide it by 12. Okay, I call this the backward procedure. All right, so that's probably the easiest way to approach it. Again, there's only two operations, multiplication and division. Okay, you just need to know what you need to do to go from one unit to the other. So for example, if you take any of these, the conversions in this chart here, you would approach it the exact same way. And that's exactly how we're going to do it in today's examples. All right, so let's see some examples so you can get some a nice idea on how the conversions work. All right, so just a recap of what we did for this one. Okay, it's actually the first example we're going to look at. And you notice what we have here is that we have something that measures 3 feet and we want to change it into inches. So what you can see here using the conversion, since I'm going from feet to inches, I need to take that 3 feet, okay, and then multiply that by 12. Okay, so you're always going to multiply or divide by whatever number makes the conversion. So when I take the 3 feet and I multiply it by 12, 3 feet will give me 36 inches. Okay, so that's all you have to do when it comes to conversion. You just have to decide whether you multiply or divide. All right, now 112 ounces to pounds. So if you do a quick glance on the conversion table there, okay, you notice that ounces and pounds belong in the mass column. So if you take a look at this next example here, we're going to use this conversion over here where we're going from pounds to ounces. However, the question is asking me to go ounces to pounds. So if you take a look at the conversion here, okay, since we're going from ounces to pounds, okay, so we're going this way over here, back, quote, backwards. Okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to take this 112 and we're going to divide it by 16. Okay, so again, the reason for that is because we're going from ounces to pounds, so we're going backwards here. So when we do that, we take the 112 divided by 16, so that's going to give us 7 pounds. Okay, so again, you just have to take a look at the conversion, see whether you're multiplying or dividing, okay, and then do the step from there. All right, let's take a look at another one here. And for this one here, we're looking at gallons to fluid ounces. So gallons and fluid ounces, if you scan through the conversion chart, okay, you notice that gallons and fluid ounces belong in the volume category. Okay, and to go from gallons to fluid ounces, okay, notice the conversion there is 128. Now, since I'm going from gallons to fluid ounces, okay, I'm going to be multiplying 25 by 128. So when we get that, we get a total of 3,200 fluid ounces. All right. Okay, for part D over here, notice we're still sticking to volume, but this time we're going from fluid ounces to cups. So if you take a look at that same column there, you will see that to go from fluid ounces to cups, we have to use the conversion when we go from cups to fluid ounces. Now, if you take a look at this one over here, okay, since we're going from fluid ounces to cups, okay, we're going to be going backwards like so. So what's going to happen for this one over here is we're going to take the 80 fluid ounces and then divide it by 8. Okay, so when you're looking at the conversion, okay, see what unit's given to you, okay, and then use the conversion to determine whether you need to multiply or divide. Again, I've mentioned that several times for all the examples that you just have to use the chart and be able to figure out what operation you're doing. Okay, so 80 fluid ounces is going to give me 10 cups. All right. So those are the basic one-step conversions here. So let's see one example of how we need to do two conversions to get our final answer. So for this one here, we are going from tons to ounces. Now, tons and ounces deal with a mass or deal with mass or weight here. So that if you take a look at the middle column, okay, if you scan through the middle column, you'll probably notice that there is no direct conversion from tons to ounces. So what we need to do here are actually two separate conversions to go from one unit to the other, and then another conversion to take that unit and put it to the final unit we want here. So how in the world are we going to do this? Well, if you take a look at your conversion here, we were going from tons to ounces. So we need to find a way first to get from tons to pounds. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to take the tons to pounds first. And you can see here when we go from tons to pounds, okay, it says here 1 ton is equal to 2,000 pounds here. So since we have the tons, we're going to take the number of tons and then multiply that by 2,000. Okay, and when we do that, when we multiply the tons to the 2,000 over here, this is going to give me 50 pounds. Okay, so right now we're one step closer to getting it into ounces. So for the final step here, since I want to go from pounds to ounces, we're now going to take that 50, and you notice to go from pounds to ounces. Okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to multiply 50 by 16. So what we're going to wind up getting here is a total of 800 ounces. So again, in some of the conversions, if there's no direct conversion, you have to see if is there a middle conversion that you can do to get you one step closer to that final conversion. All right, so you might want to put a star beside that one because that one tends to give people some difficulty sometimes. All right, So those are some basic conversions here. And what we want to do now is just to take a look at some other problems, again, using the chart in order for us to solve the problem. So this time we're going to work with volume. So it says here, Sebastian owns a resto bar in Woodbridge, and he bought a 66-gallon drum of mayonnaise from Costco. And what we want to do here is he needs to fill pint-sized bottles with the mayonnaise from the drum here. So what we want to do here is to figure out how many bottles Sebastian will fill. Well, in this question here, each bottle will be 1 pint. So what we need to do for this one here is we need to go from gallons to pint. Now, gallons, okay, in terms of what that is, okay, that's a measure of volume here. So if you take a look at your conversion chart, okay, notice that what we have here, when we're looking at gallons and pints over here, okay, what we have here would be 1 gallon is equal to 8 pints. Okay, so let's see what we have to do for this one. So since we're going from gallons to pints, okay, and the conversion that we have is 1 gallon is equal to 8 pints there. What we're going to do with that 66 is we're going to multiply by 8 because we're doing a forward conversion. So by doing that, okay, we're going to multiply the 66 by 8 there. So this will tell us that we will need 528 bottles in order for us to fill that particular drum. All right. So again, when you're dealing with the conversions, again, just take a look at the conversion chart again. Okay, see what unit you're starting off with and what you wind up with. Take a look at the conversion factor and then multiply or divide it from there. Okay. Okay, so the next one we're going to look at here, okay, is going to be a problem where we're not only are we going to be dealing with conversion, but we also have to deal with taking that conversion and then finding out how much something costs here. So very similar to the kind of test they did, they give in places that hardware stores and things like that they give to employees. This is very similar to the kind of questions they ask here. And what we have here is this: calculate the cost to carpet the floor shown. Okay, the carpet costs $25 per square yard. Okay. So notice there's a thing that I made a note here just to explain to you that square yards is a unit of area. So we are going to use a formula for area somewhere in this question. Now, if you take a look at the question over here, if you take a look at the diagram, okay, notice that our answer somehow has to be in square yards. However, we don't have our measurement here in yards. So the first step we need to do here is we need to take those two measurements, the 15 and the 21, and we need to change those into yards first. Okay, so we know if you take a look at the chart here, I kind of went forward there. If you're looking at length here, you notice the conversion that we have here is 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. So what we have to do for this one over here is that we are going from feet to yards. Okay, so we are going this way here. We're going backwards, like this. So in order for us to go from feet to yards, okay, we have to take each of these measurements and then divide them by 3, okay, because we're going from feet to yards here. All right. So when we do that, this 21, when we divide this by 3, this now becomes 7 yards. And the 15, when we divide that by 3, become 5 yards, okay? So these are our new units. So that's step number 1. Now, as you can see, somewhere in our question, we need to have it in square yards, which happens to be a measure for area or a unit for area. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use a formula that you were introduced to back in grade 9, and you're going to see it again in the next couple of lessons. Is the area of a rectangle, which is length times width. So when we take the 5 and the 7 and multiply them together, okay, what we wind up getting here is 35 square yards. Okay, so now just to double check here, our units are now in the form that we want them to. Okay, and last but not least, we just need to find the price now. So it tells us here that for every square yard, it's going to cost $25. So what's going to happen over here is that for 1 square yard, we will be paying $25 for that yard there. So since we have 35 yards, all we need to do there is to take the 25 and then multiply it to the 35 here. So that will give me a final answer there of $875. All right. Okay, so that wraps up the first lesson dealing with conversion. And as you can see here, we dealt strictly with imperial conversion. And in the next lesson, we're going to look at conversion again. The only difference is that we will be looking at metric, which is the measurements that we use here in Canada. Okay, and we're going to see how we can go from metric to imperial and imperial to metric. So until the next lesson, I will see you then.